Chapter 2. The room was a stark white blur. Callum clenched his eyes shut in an effort to block out the incandescent lights. He lay flat on his back with his limbs outstretched. When he tried to bend his arms, a pair of fabric restraints impeded his movement. Something feels different. Something's wrong. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make sense of the situation. A deep voice sounded from his right.
Callum, can you hear me?
He stiffened.
Callum, if you can hear me, open your eyes. Slowly.
His right eyelid lifted a fraction of an inch, followed by the left. He adapted to the brightness of the room, and when he no longer needed to squint, he sought out the source of the voice.
Good to see you awake and alive.
He tried to turn his head and was successful. A man sat next to the table on which he rested, his pale blue eyes intently focused on him. Gray hair was slicked back from his forehead, which creased as a smile spread across his thin lips.
We weren't sure you were going to make it.
Where am I?
Callum's throat was dry, and he managed little more than a choked whisper.
Who are you? What happened?
One inquiry at a time. You've been through a lot, after all.
The man adjusted the collar of his pristine white cloak.
I am Dr. Zedek. You're in my laboratory, which is part of a larger underground facility.
He swallowed and was able to muster a louder tone.
How did you know my name?
Zedek tapped his wrist, below the restraints.
As soon as we saw you were a member of the Tectoni military, we located and scanned your chip.
Military.
Memories wafted through his mind like a cold breeze.
There was an attack. At the border.
Indeed there was.
Callum furrowed his brow as he recalled the images of the grotesque weapons that had hit his tank.
Where are the others?
The doctor's smile disappeared.
Unfortunately, you were the only member of your unit we found alive.
He closed his eyes, grief and panic forming a nauseating pit in his stomach. There were so many questions, but his top priority remained unchanged.
Meta, I need to get out of here. I need to get home to my family.
He struggled to sit up and couldn't.
Let me go.
We can't. Not yet.
I need to get home, he said, shaking his head. I have to get back to CERN.
Callum.
He cringed, not waiting to hear what he was certain the next words were going to be.
CERN is gone,
Zedek said, his tone even.
Everything within 30 miles of Tectan's border was decimated.
No!
He fought against the restraints.
They were supposed to be safe there. Everyone moved far enough away.
I'm sorry.
No!
The cuffs held him in place, and he thrashed against them. His exertion was futile.
Doctor, his heart rate's all over the place,
spoke a second man behind Callum.
Zedek leaned forward. Callum, listen to me. I know you've had quite the shock, and there was no good way to break the news to you. But we went through an awful lot to try to save your life, and you may not be out of the woods yet. You need to calm down.
He attempted to relax and slow his breathing.
Okay. I'm okay.
He swiveled his head to the opposite side to see the second person attending to him. Before he could get a good look at the man, he caught sight of the other side of his body. His arm was a pure black hue and gave off a glossy sheen. When he twisted his wrist to inspect the underside of his palm, he glimpsed the mechanical joints of his fingers. Lifting his head, he saw the smooth material extending down the line of his torso. His leg looked utterly inhuman and unnatural. It responded to his commands, and he rotated his ankle without difficulty. But it was a poor match for the tanned flesh on the opposite side. He trembled, and the sickening feeling increased.
What did you do to me?
We saved your life. You were badly injured and— What did you do to me? He screamed.
He put all his strength into breaking free of his bindings. Though he didn't know where he was, he needed to escape. He was trapped in the worst nightmare his imagination could conjure, and he was desperate for any way out. Zedek stood up.
Sedate him.
Callum wanted to beg him for answers, to choke an explanation out of him. His limbs grew heavy, and he was unable to speak. Through the haze of the drugs coursing through his system, he thought he spotted a woman appear at the side of the table. He didn't have time to examine her closely before being thrust back into unconsciousness. The first thing Callum saw upon waking was the stern glare of Dr. Zedek.
You don't seem very grateful for someone who was on the brink of death not long ago.
Callum said nothing.
When we stumbled across your crumpled body in the aftermath of the battle, my team and I worked very hard to rescue you.
Maybe you should have let me die out there, he muttered.
Had I known you were going to be so much trouble, I might have considered it.
The doctor's steely gaze did not change.
But you're here. You're alive. And while I haven't performed a neurological exam on you, I haven't seen any evidence of brain damage or loss of cognitive function.
He mulled over the assessment. Thank you.
Much better.
His tight smile emerged again.
Now, if you promise to maintain your composure, we can remove the restraints. I can also answer some more of your questions, as long as you're not flailing about like a madman.
Callum nodded. Zedek unfastened the cuffs on his right side. As soon as he could move his arm, his fingers flew to his face. The skin on his forehead, nose, and right cheek seemed to be intact. The other side felt different beneath his fingertips. He assumed it was covered in the same synthetic skin that had startled him earlier. It stretched down over his neck and around the back of his head. For the first time, he wondered how severe his injuries were. Another man freed the altered left side of his body and helped him into a sitting position once he was no longer attached to the table. He appeared younger than the doctor, and his hair was considerably darker. Unlike the older man, there was no contempt reflected in his eyes.
My assistant, Vlad Castles, said Zedek. He's been monitoring you closely since we first brought you in here. Also involved in your case is one of my top agents, Bro Bernard.
Behind the doctor, a slender woman perched atop a stool. Callum recognized her as the person of whom he'd caught a glimpse before the sedatives had knocked him out. At her introduction, she hopped up from her seat and approached the table. "Pleased to meet you," she said. Callum raised one suspicious eyebrow. "Agent? That's a curious title." Zedek laughed.
Surely you must have realized by now this is not a military facility.
He hadn't given it much thought. Looking around the austere room, he saw no markings, nothing to help him determine the affiliation of his saviors. If Zedek told the truth, he could at least rest assured he was not being held captive in enemy territory. He required more information. So, where am I?
Geographically,
one of Zedek's shoulders twitched.
We're approximately 60 miles west from the mess of a border you were so valiantly trying to protect.
In Charitar or Palavia? He asked.
Does it matter?
Annoyance tinged his question.
None of us swear allegiance in any particular land. The Midnight Scorpions are spread all throughout these 3 war-torn countries and beyond.
The wary eyebrow arched again.
I've heard of you, Callum said.
I thought you guys were a myth. Just another scare tactic to keep us focused and instill a sense of pride.
We are plenty real, I assure you.
Zedek's lips twisted back into his pleased grin.
We do serve a purpose. We also offer plenty of services to anyone who might be interested.
So you're...
Some call us mercenaries.
Ro chimed in. But I think it's a rather loaded term, don't you? Zedek didn't give him a chance to answer.
What they call us is unimportant. What we do is far more significant.
And what, precisely, is it that you do? Callum asked.
Trust me, you will become better acquainted with the practices of our organization.
The doctor's wry smile never faltered.
Because now, my brave soldier, you are one of us.